Steve Bann is considered one of the most influential golf coaches in Australian history. He built a training program that produced major champions and some of the highest-ranked players in the world. But before any of that, he tried to help Baker-Finch save a career that was falling apart. It did not go the way either of them hoped, and Bann inadvertently played a part in creating one of the biggest collapses in modern golf history. This is the story of Steve Bann and Baker-Finch. To understand the story between Baker-Finch and Steve Bann, we need to understand who Bann actually was. He grew up in Melbourne in a family with no connection to golf whatsoever. As a 12-year-old, he started carrying bags at a local club called Riversdale, earning $1.25 a round. Nobody in his family had ever picked up a club. He turned professional in 1979 and spent over a decade playing on the Australian PGA Tour. His playing career never produced the big title he came closest to, but it gave him something more useful: a deep, first-hand understanding of what it feels like to compete under pressure, to be on the edge of winning, and to fall short. Eventually, his career took a new direction entirely. He stepped away from competing and became a coach. And he was about to cross paths with one of the most famous golfers in the world. Baker-Finch was, at his peak, one of the most naturally gifted golfers Australia had ever produced. Tall, elegant, with a swing that looked effortless. He had been knocking on the door of a major championship for years before everything finally came together at Royal Birkdale in 1991. That week, he was untouchable. He closed with rounds of 64 and 66 to win the Open Championship by 2 shots. It was one of the most dominant final day performances the tournament had seen in years. That night, Baker-Finch did not celebrate with sponsors or disappear into a private function. Instead, he and his wife Jenny, along with Steve Bann, quietly made their way back to the course after midnight. A security guard let them in when Baker-Finch showed him the claret jug. Jenny stayed by the green, while Baker-Finch and Bann walked back up the final hole together in the dark, retracing the shots that had just changed his life. That moment tells you everything about the relationship between these two men. This was not a coach and his client. This was a friendship built over years, grounded in a shared love of the game, which makes what happened next even harder to explain. Within a year of winning the Open, something had started to go wrong for Baker-Finch. His form began to slip. He started worrying about the length of his drives, feeling like he was losing ground off the tee against the rest of the field. Small doubts crept in, then bigger ones. He did what struggling players often do. He started asking for help from everyone. David Ledbetter, who had coached him to the Open title, was still involved. But Baker-Finch also turned to Butch Harmon, Hank Haney, Jim Flick, Rick Smith, Chuck Cook, and a long list of others. He tried hypnosis, he changed caddies, he had knee surgery and corrective eye surgery. He consulted sports psychologists, nutritionists, and healers. By the time the worst years had passed, he had worked with more than 30 coaches, psychologists, and specialists of various kinds. Ledbetter, watching from the outside, summed it up in one sentence. Ian needed just one pill, he said, and instead he took the whole bottle. But Baker-Finch was not thinking clearly anymore. He was a major champion who had lost his game and could not find it again, reaching out in every direction for something, anything, that might bring it back. One of the people he turned to was his old friend Steve Bann. When Baker-Finch came to Bann, the timing is worth pausing on. Bann had been the founding head coach of the VIS program for only 3 to 4 years at that point. His system was still young. None of his students had yet made a name for themselves on tour. He was not a coach with a long record of proven results behind him. He was a friend with a genuine desire to help and a technical theory he believed in. The problem Baker-Finch presented seemed straightforward enough. He was missing too many shots to the right. The ball was going where he did not want it to go, and it was costing him on the course. Something in the mechanics of his swing needed to change. Bann identified the swing plane as the issue. The solution, as they worked on it together, was to flatten the plane, to adjust the angle and path the club traveled through the air during the swing. Alongside that, Baker-Finch's club face became slightly more laid off at the top of his backswing than it had been before. On paper, the logic was not unreasonable. If the ball is going right, adjust the path. Find the cause, fix the problem, move on. But what neither of them fully accounted for was how deeply a golf swing lives inside a player's body. A professional golfer does not think through every position during a swing. There is no time for that. The movement happens in fractions of a second, driven almost entirely by muscle memory built up over years and years of repetition. Baker-Finch's original swing, the one that had carried him to a major championship, was not just a technique, it was wired into him. There is also a physical reality that makes this particular change especially dangerous. Baker-Finch stood 6 feet 4 inches tall. For a golfer of that height, a flatter swing plane works against the body's natural geometry. Tall players are built for upright swings, ones that move more vertically and work with the length of their arms and the height of their shoulders. Flattening the plane on a tall player forces the body into positions it was never designed to hold, especially under pressure, especially at speed. The results were immediate and devastating. Baker-Finch did not just fail to improve, he fell apart entirely. He missed 32 consecutive cuts on the PGA Tour. At the Open Championship at St. Andrews in 1995, playing alongside Arnold Palmer in front of a packed crowd, he snap-hooked his very first tee shot so severely that it crossed 2 fairways and went out of bounds. Caddies at St. Andrews said they had never seen a touring professional do that before. Looking back on that period, Baker-Finch did not spread the blame across the long list of coaches and advisors he had worked with. He pointed to one specific change. "That was the biggest mistake I made in my life," he said. Bann had not set out to cause any of this. He was trying to help a friend. But the outcome was clear. The swing change made under his guidance had contributed to one of the most painful collapses in modern golf history. Steve Bann never spoke publicly about what happened with Baker-Finch in the way that makes headlines. There was no interview where he dissected the situation, no detailed account of what went wrong from his perspective. But what happened next in his coaching career makes it clear that the experience left a mark. The philosophy Bann built in the years that followed was shaped, at least in part, by what he had witnessed up close. Not just with Baker-Finch, but through the entire pattern of what happens when a golfer starts reacting to problems without understanding their real source. The core of his approach became what he calls the improvement life cycle. Real change in a golfer's game, he argues, does not happen in a single session or through one technical fix. It moves through 4 layers: technical, physical, mental, and strategic. Each one affects the others. Pull on one thread without understanding the rest, and the whole thing unravels. He also became deeply resistant to the idea of applying the same solution to every player. There is no universal swing, no single correct position that works for every body type, every personality, every set of natural tendencies. The swing that wins majors for one player can quietly destroy another. One example he often returns to involves Tiger Woods. When Woods holds a short shot on the green, the kind he has made thousands of times before, he reacts with intense, almost exaggerated excitement, fist pumping, celebrating across the green. Bann's reading of that moment is precise. Woods is not just expressing emotion. He is locking that feeling into memory, anchoring the sensation of success so his body can find it again when the pressure is highest. That is the kind of thinking Bann brought into every coaching relationship after Baker-Finch. Not quick fixes, not reactive adjustments. Understanding first, then change. In 1990, Steve Bann was appointed the founding head coach of the Victorian Institute of Sport Golf program, known as VIS. The program was unlike anything that had existed in Australian golf before. No blueprint, no template, no proven method to copy. Just a coach with a set of hard-earned beliefs and a group of talented teenagers whose futures depended on getting it right. The results that followed were difficult to argue with. Graduates of the program went on to include Stuart Appleby, Robert Allenby, Jeff Ogilvy, and Aaron Baddeley, among others. They won tournaments across the world, including the US Open. By some counts, the Viz program became the only one of its kind anywhere in the world to produce as many as 5 to 7 teenagers who reached the world's top 50 rankings. Beyond Viz, Bann also worked with some of the biggest names in the game at various points in their careers, among them Greg Norman, Vijay Singh, and Adam Scott. 29 victories on the PGA Tour came from players who had passed through Bann's system. This was not luck. This was not one gifted player who happened to emerge from a program. This was a method refined through failure as much as success, producing world-class talent year after year. The man who had once contributed to the worst swing change of a major champion's career had built something that kept creating new ones. Stuart Appleby, who worked with Bann from the age of 18, put it simply: Steve is the most knowledgeable coach in the world and can help any golfer of any skill level achieve their goals. Today, Steve Bann is in his mid-60s and he is still coaching. Several days a week he works with players at Yarra Bend and at Kingston Heath. There is no retirement announcement, no farewell tour. He simply keeps showing up the same way he has for most of his adult life. In recent years, that long career received formal recognition when Bann was inducted into the Victorian Golf Hall of Fame. It was not a celebration of perfection, but an acknowledgement of something rarer, a career built honestly through failure as much as success over several decades. Reflecting on the honor, Bann said, "It's really great to be honored at the not-so-pointy end of your career for something you have always loved doing." Here's what the story of Steve Bann actually comes down to. A man builds an entire coaching philosophy out of a mistake. Not a minor one. The most visible swing collapse in modern golf, involving one of his closest friends, playing out in front of the whole world. Bann turned that failure into a system. Every principle he developed afterward came directly out of understanding what had gone wrong with Baker-Finch. Ian Baker-Finch recovered too, eventually finding a second career as one of golf's most respected television commentators. As for Bann, he is still at the club, still coaching, still doing the thing he has always loved. The man who broke a champion's swing went on to build a dozen more.